This is Sailor Fred once again. So this time I want to talk a little bit of my history working for my old man, Sailor Barney Sr. Was on a Carnival lot, and I'm the youngest out of four boys. And then my uncle was either in Seaside or Monterey, one or the other. So at one time there was 6 of us in the family tattooing all over the country. And we weren't a real close family, as my brothers are older than me. So they go to one carnival, we were on another, stuff like that. But so in '68 when I started, the only tattoo shops were in military towns or beach resort towns, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Long Beach, stuff like that. And so most of the guys, the majority, was carnival or circus people. And through the years, the circuses stopped it. And they always had a tattooed man, like Ringling Brothers and all the smaller ones. And they actually tattooed when they weren't on the stage. And that dwindled down. It was just carnivals, and that's my era from the 60s to sometime in the 80s was real hot for carnivals. And some of the younger guys messed up the spots, so you can't tattoo. Not where it's worthwhile anymore. But I started, I believe, and I have a real bad memory, so I don't know why I remember this, but I started in Haverstraw, New York. We lived in Brooklyn in the winter with my grandmother, or thereabouts, every winter. And April 14th or 15th was Haverstraw, New York, and it was a show, a real like a rag bag carnival as it was. But rides back then, the big rides were Tilt-A-Whirl, the Scrambler. They didn't have all these super spectacular rides you see today. And everything was, most of the stuff was all ground mounted, so them ride jocks had a like constructional steel job. And they waited for us every year. But that was my first spot out. And the old man really didn't want to teach me how to tattoo. I was young. It was 1968. And my brother Larry had an argument with the old man's wife, Shelley, I believe she was the wife at the time. And so Larry split, so he told me to sit down. Now, all winter I was drawing flash, and that spot, the beginning of the spot, I did some tattoos on my legs when the shop was closed and showed it to him. And I remember Shelley saying, if you could do a freehand rose, you could freehand anything. Because everything was kind of cartoony back then. There was 2 dots for a nose, a dot for an eye. It wasn't like portrait work and none of that stuff. Very cartoony, old school as it was today, or nostalgic tattoo, I heard the younger crowd call it. So he told me to sit down, and back then when you broke somebody in, my old man did all the black work, the outline and shading, and then you moved over and got colored. So he already started another one, and it was quicker that way. But everybody broke in people back in the day like that. Today we break them in, they do the whole job. Tats Taylor in Fort Lauderdale, he had, when the changing of the needles and the tubes and all that came about, somewhere in the 70s, late 70s, he had all the machines all set up in test tubes. And when the ships come in, he used to call and tell me, go to the airport, there's a ticket waiting for you. And I went down there, tattooed Tony DePietro from Cortland, New York, worked for him full time at that time. And so we had a semi-line, Tats Taylor do the outline, I do the black shading, Tony did the coloring, but the 2 machines got passed from artist to artist. So the same guy's blood was on that machine. But he had a shitload of machines, all with a plastic rack with all the test tubes. And I think Spalding was the first one to come out with that Benzol. It's kind of like a Barbizol with a barber's keep that combs and scissors in. I believe Benzol was pink and the barber stuff was blue or green. And that's how we did it back in the day. And from carnival to carnival, every year they waited for us. There was not this massive shops like it is today. There was 100-something artists when I started. And so every year they wait for my old man to come in. So it was like instant. My old man knew about how much he was going to make every year. And we always took care of the show electrician. Because we had electricity so we could tattoo before the show opened up, after the show closed every night during the week. And the ride jocks alone, you hit them the night of payday, you stay open almost all night tattooing them. Because by the next day they're broke between their beer and pot or whatever they're into. And but the local people, they just, my old man was tattooing them people for years, so it was like a instant money. And on a carnival lot back then, it was a very fast pace. It's almost like I would compare it to a convention today. You get done with one, you got another one right in your chair, right behind it. And then you had your dead times too, and you had your rainy spots. But even in the rain, the local people came down because they only seen us once a year. And I worked for the old man for quite a few years. And somewhere in the 80s, he started working for me because I opened up in Rochester, New York in 1975. It was my first shop by myself. And before that, I was just working for the old man. And we traveled so much, so I met a lot of the old timers. I'm 63 now. And just being in that era, and me and Marvin Moskowitz talked about this because he's 61. We at our age, we met all the old timers in the carnival business and the tattoo business, the rock and roll guys in the beginning, Motley Crue and all that. We hit them first as far as tattooing. So you met all the older guys. So these kids today, they're meeting guys my age, and most of them don't care about the history of tattooing. The ones that do sit down with you for hours and hours and hours and listen to our old stories. And boy, do I got a lot of them. And so my oldest brother, Howie, passed away. He's the first out of the four, about a year ago, slightly over a year ago. My old man died quite a few years ago. I believe it was in '01. And he died on St. Valentine's Day. And for him, that was a good day because he had more women than I did, and I was a hoe. So St. Valentine's Day was a good, Cupid hit him in the right spot for the right time. So we all got diabetes, so we expect stuff like that to happen. And so like I said, we're all different parts of the country. So when we were kids, because Sailor Fred was never in the military, and we were kids, we were all little Sailor Barney Juniors. So you set up at one carnival and a gypsy would come over to you. I just saw little Sailor Barney in Washington. And another person would come over and say, I just saw little Sailor Barney in South Carolina or in Texas, and on and on and on. So that's where my sailor came from, is just Sailor Barney. I was lucky to get Fred into that picture. And I don't regret it. It was cool. I know a lot of veterans, and they always ask me. I tell them, and they all laugh about that. And there's actually another Fred in town, so when people want to question or something, they say Sailor Fred or Fred the Sailor. So that's a cute little one there. And so back to the carnival business. There's oversized carnivals, like big state fair. Sometimes, most of the time, like Syracuse, New York, York, Pennsylvania, and Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. That was the old man's last three spots. And when names were $2, we used to walk out with $19,000, $20,000. I told the guys this morning at breakfast, my father's wife, Shelley, she was just learning. She had a beautiful penmanship. And everything was done freehand back then. We didn't have computers. And so the old man was breaking her in, and she had all just names and little butterflies on girls. And she made $2,200 that one year. And I was about 18, 19 years old, so whatever year that was. And now, today, we do this little shop. It's just a part-time shop. I just don't want to give it up. I'm basically retired. But we just spending money here. We're not a high-volume shop at all. But people come from all over, because I met them years ago when I traveled a lot. I don't travel as much, but I'm still going to travel as long as I can. And it's kind of cool. My kids are out west, so I always set up appointments before I get out there. Kind of like a free visit to the kids. The money I make, I blow on them anyhow. And that's just part of it, I guess, for the carnival stuff. I could go on and on to people. Tattoo Tony, he was a ride jock when he got home from Nam. He went to work for a concessionaire, and it was a derby race, like a horse race game. You hit a little pounder, and the ball went into fast or slow, and the horses ran them. And they gave away actual brass horses, 3 different sizes. You could trade them in as you won more games. And that's how I met Tony. And he came up to the old man. He was on one side of a permanent building at the fairground. We were on the other every year. And someone in his attic, or someone gave him or sold him, was a cigar box with a couple of Jonesy machines. And so the old man gave him like a tattoo or something for it. And it was only a couple years after that he said he was tattooing, so we helped him because we were already friends with him. Every year, you know, whenever we had spare time, we go sit at the joint, we call it the game, and they're called joints on a carnival lot. And we always, you know, have lunch or beer or whatever. Of course, the beer was under the counter, and that's how we met Tony. And he tattooed the rest of his life until the day he died. And he worked for me for quite a few years. He was actually my youngest daughter Nicole's godfather. And he's from Cortland, New York, right outside the prison, on the right side of the wall. And he worked for me in the summer. Then K.C. Cullison had a freak show, and he's a tattoo artist out of Akron, Ohio. And then he'd go to work when he came up to Monroe County Fair outside of Rochester, and worked for Carl all the way down south. And I think his sister lived in Greensboro, in the Carolinas. And then he worked for Tats Taylor in Fort Lauderdale. And then he just wound up staying after a few years right with Tats. And Tats Taylor's gone now too. His wife Connie, she's still running the shop. And she's a very nice kid. She's actually from around Rochester, little town outside of Rochester. And what do you call it? So Tony worked for Taylor full time, and like I said, when the ships come in, we used to do that assembly line thing. He said, don't pack your clothes, no, we'll just buy your clothes, get your ass down here quick. So then Paul Rogers, whenever you went through Jacksonville, you had to stop at Paul's house. And he had a little shed in the backyard. It wasn't even a garage, it was like an Amish shed. And he hand make those machines, and he was old by then. And you just learned so much from Paul Rogers. He was one of the last gentlemen in the business. He was very mellow, and you learned a lot from Paul. So who else on the road? I mean, Crazy Ace, we met in Texas. There was tons and tons of people. And the old man was opened up a shop in Spring Valley, New York. There was 5 shops that actually every Sunday we take turns running to the houses or the shops. Either we go out to eat or we go to a restaurant. And that was my old man, Danny Frank, Tattoo Larry in Butler, New Jersey. Danny Frank was up on 9W, I think in Nanuet. And Big Joe Kaplan in Yonkers, Larry, and there was one other guy. Oh, P.A. Stevens had a little shop in outside of Spring Valley. I think Red Hook, Red Hook, New York, I think it was. And that's before he became the great P.A. Stevens, of course. And you just meet a lot of people in this business. And we'll talk some more. Okay, this is most of my machine collection. We had this in the Tattoo Museum. Some of the stuff I don't know where I got it from. I just saved tattoo stuff. My favorite one, Charlie Wagner. It says Professor Charles Wagner, New York, New York. Grew up with that name once I hooked up with my old man, who I met later in life. And this is just some of the stuff, like I said, I don't know where I got most of it. Just people coming in the old fairs before the big tattoo boom. There's only a few of us went around to the fairs we went to, and show up with a shoebox. Hey, found these in my grandfather's attic. And so you give him $5 or a tattoo or whatever. And here we go. A little shop in Springwater, New York. And this is one of my customers, Bert Brown. And he got some tattoos through the years when he was younger. And then he decided to get covered up. So like one of his oldest one, the Zigzag Man. He has a winged wheel Where's that one? Right here. And you know, you get this stuff when you're young, you don't know you're going to get covered. Of course, the young kids today, they want to sleeve right away, you know. But our age, you didn't want to get covered right away. And that meant me too, actually. So we just did the color here and the lightning bolt and the flowers and the leaves. We laid this out because Bert goes to Florida every winter. So we wanted to like keep it pretty much the way it's going to be. So the next couple of sittings, we're going to be filling in the color. Then we're going to even up this center line. And so basically one side is like skulls, the other side is Japanese work, and they all is chest. This is all skull work up here. And we'll get to you back in a little while. Come back this way. So at some point, this was like old school he wanted, military. And at some point we said Japanese work and skull work. And hopefully we could blend them. So this samurai guy, we sculled him out instead of just putting the mask on him and stuff. And then they got one here. And both of them came off J.D. Crow's flash, one of his earliest sets of flash. And naturally the Sacred Carp. ISO bars, whirlwinds. To match this side with the skull, we threw some bones and skulls in the whirlwind. So kind of blend both sides is definitely two different subjects. So we're managing to come out pretty good here. So we got a dragon rolling right down this whole arm. Some flower work, skulls. There's another old tattoo here. Work around it. What's that?
That's Barney's.
Oh, my old man, Sailor Barney Sr. did that one. And he spelt everything right, too. Yeah. Here's another carp. Part of the dragon wrapping around. Some iso bars. Here's a Oni head. Oni mask, actually. So we're managing to come out good, considering he had that old school tattoos, you know, getting one or two here and there. And then this side, like I said, the military in the middle, and he wanted the birds, the old school birds. And then we clouded it in and went hog wild after that, pretty much. So this side, like I said, we skulled out the samurai warrior, and I had some skulls on him earlier, just like I said, just doing the tattoo. And we're managing to like a huge whirlwind with subliminal skulls, and comes around here to all skull work. More skulls here coming out of this whirlwind, and I think you're gonna have to stand up for your back. This is a pretty interesting back piece here. You gotta face the camera with it. So, very famous tattoo, old school back piece was Dueling in the Sun, the two eagles with the sun. We eliminated the eagle, and when we were just doing black and gray at one time. So we got the black and gray eagle, and the Japanese with a lot of color, we colored the other one. Left out the sun. And we continued the iso bars in the skulls. Okay, so now we got up here the Battle Royale, and there's been so many different battle royals, but basically it's an eagle, snake, and dragon. So we got a dragon, we got a snake, and the eagle in and out of the skull. Just change it up a little bit. So basically it's two back pieces, and then we brought the skulls into it and the iso bars for the Japanese side. And here's some Japanese, some bubble work, some cherry blossoms. Again, flame skulls. There's a different Oni head, or is that the same one? No, that's a different one. He has the one on his side we showed you. And it's all coming together, considering we started with two totally subjects. And I think it's working out good. Eventually we're going to come down lower, because he said his pants always hangs down like that. So, and then his armpits are going to get closed in a little bit more than they are. And this winter, because he goes to Florida, he sends up a Facebook picture of him lounging on the beach, no shirt on. I envied that picture. And like I said, we're finishing up this color on the carp and the flower work here. And we'll get them done. And then we'll start adding on, finish up that center clear piece, which ain't God, just bring the whirlwind up, but we're going to make it even, so it'll be real thin, the thinnest point So we'll bring all this up so it's the same like the Jap work. And that's Bert Brown's tattoo so far. My whole life, from carnivals to tattooing, everybody, as I got older and we tell the old stories of the heydays, hey, you should write a book, you should write a book. Well, here I am. I'm in the middle of writing a book. It might take me the rest of the year to do it, maybe a little longer, but we're going to get it done. And I'm coming out with a flash book in the meantime.